Hello and welcome back to this monster brainchild of a project. If you're new here, I am making a women scientists quilt for Women's History Month. It's featuring 20 women scientists and this is a 4-part video series. So last week, check out the video, I designed the quilt and showed you what all it's about. Today we're going to be cutting out all the pieces we need. Next week we will be actually sewing it together, and finally the last Friday of March, we're gonna finish this gosh dang thing. So the design phase is complete, all ready to go. Here's the design we're going for, and now we actually have to cut out all of the pieces. So we need to cut out white fabric for the backgrounds of the portrait, dark brown fabric for all the picture frames, the blue floral fabric for the background, and every single one of the portraits of 20 different women scientists. Let's do it! I figured for today's video I would just more so go through how I'm cutting out each of the women scientists, because watching me sit on the floor and cut out just like squares of fabric is way less interesting. Let me show you how I'm doing this. 1 second. Remember this? This is my tide pool quilt runner that I made end of last summer, and I'm using techniques that are very similar to what I did for this. So each of these pieces was cut out, stuck on some double-sided sticky stuff, double-sided sticky interfacing, and then ironed onto the background. So it's a lot of cutting and ironing, just kind of like iron-on patch would be. So that's what I'm doing here with each women scientist, is I need to trace them onto the fabrics, cut them out, and then iron them onto their white backgrounds. Let's do that. Let's start. There's gonna be a lot of camera movement in this video. I'm just kicking fabric around my floor, but let us sit down. Chair. We're gonna start here with Maria Sabia Marian. What I did is I took my Adobe Illustrator file, which is all to the exact size I want it to be, and just took out her image at the right size and printed it out. But the key thing I had to remember was to flip the image, because I will be tracing it this way, and when I go to iron it on, it'll actually iron on this way. So I needed the image to be reversed so that it appears the correct way that I have it on my diagram. So I did that, and now I have my roll of interfacing, and it's time to start tracing. So this has like kind of a waxy side and a more parchment papery side. The waxy side is actually one layer of stickiness, and the parchment papery side is kind of the protective layer. So I'm gonna be tracing with the parchmenty paper side sticking up. Now I'm doing each of these designs in 2 layers. One is the black outline in black fabric, and then one is the rest of the face in a skin colored or more skin tone fabric. So I have to create 2 outlines. So the first one I have to do is the overall skin tone outline for it. So that is the whole outline for the entire face, basically. So I don't go in and trace all of the small details. I'm just tracing the overall large outline. This is the easier one to trace and to cut out. So now that we have that, we have to do a second outline. And this one, we have to trace the exact same thing, or most of the same thing we just traced, but we have to make sure we trace around every single black outline. So that means inside of the face and outside of the face. So as I'm tracing this design, I do want to either tell you about or remind you about the 31 Days of Women Scientists that's going on. So that is every single day for the month of March. I have been creating an outfit inspired by a women scientist and highlighting their accomplishments. So please go check that out if you haven't already. It's super fun. One of my favorite things I do on this channel. And also, I can give you some other women scientist highlights of the women that I'm featuring on this here quilty boy. So one, I could just start with who the heck is Maria Sabia Marian, the lady I'm outlining right now. She was a Dutch painter that learned how to do watercolor painting from her father, who was also an artist, and her stepfather, who was also an artist. And she loved insects from a young age, so she really enjoyed painting flowers and insects, or painting insects that she studied, and she would paint them on like the flowers they would eat or the food or other plants they would grow on. And she was really obsessed with metamorphosis, so how like butterflies go from caterpillars to butterflies, or any other insects that undergo a metamorphic stage, because scientists at the time had absolutely no freaking idea what metamorphosis was. They didn't understand how it worked, and they just kind of thought that, like, if you saw rotting meat and flies appeared at the rotting meat, that the rotting meat gave birth to the flies. They didn't understand that flies laid eggs in the rotting meat that hatched into maggots that grew into adult flies. But thanks to Maria Sibylla Merion's very detailed observations and ability to put them in a visual format through painting, she is able to help kind of provide a guide and field notes and understand that, hey, rotting meat doesn't give birth to flies, flies give birth to flies. So we have to thank Maria Sibylla Merion for very greatly advancing our understanding of how insects develop, which sounds like a really weird thing that you wouldn't think people have to be taught, but it is what they had to be taught, so we thank her for doing this work. So now we have two outlines. One's going to be in a skin tone, and one is going to be on black fabric. So we cut them out, or we kind of we cut them out to just general blocky shapes. So here, if you can kind of see it, we have, it's very faint. See it better on the back a little bit? It's incredibly faint. The outline of her entire face, and this is just the outline of her body. Now we go to the ironing board. So we want to take the fabric of the right color that we want to use, iron it and make sure it looks all nice in the area we're about to stick it down on. Get some water up in here. Get that steam action. And then we iron down the piece that we want to cut out. So here's my black outlines, ironing it all down onto the black fabric. And I'm going to repeat the same thing with the outline on some flesh toned fabric. Oh, it's hot. Let me talk to you about another women scientist on this here quilty boy, and that is Marie Curie, probably one of the most iconic women scientists, with good reason. She's a Polish-born, Polish-born, French naturalized citizen who is best known for her work on radioactivity. She and her husband are actually the ones that came up with the term for radioactivity. You know, like, so if you like to say the word radioactive, thank the Curies for that. She also discovered 2 elements and won 2 Nobel Prizes, one in chemistry, one in physics. Still the only person to have won 2 Nobel Prizes in 2 different fields. Was the first women Nobel Prize winner also. But thanks to her and her pioneering study on radioactivity, basically opened up the entire field of physics as we know it today. So anything to do with like particle physics or radioactivity, nuclear energy, all of that stemmed from Marie Curie's great work. So if you care about nuclear, you care about the Curies. Chop, 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 chop. Okay, so we have black piece ironed with the outline, tan piece ironed with the other outline. Now we got to cut all of these pieces out. I'm actually probably just gonna stand here because I'm too lazy to move my camera. So yeah, basically now we just sit here and we cut these out in excruciatingly fine detail. This is the most tedious part of this project. You ready for another women scientist? We've got to tackle 5 each video, and I think we're on number 3. So let's talk about Grace Hopper. Grace Hopper was a computer programmer. She did a lot of stuff, including working for the Navy for a very, very long time. I believe retiring at the position of being a Rear Admiral. So Rear Admiral Grace Hopper, really cool lady. But perhaps the thing she's most known for is creating a computer language that could be utilized by using English commands. So she took a look at the future of computers and saw, hey, everybody's gonna need to be able to use computers. And people who aren't even computer programmers or like computer nerds or science nerds or whatever are going to need to be able to use computers. But they're probably not going to be very good at computer programming. So we need to find a way for people who don't know all the technical jargon of computer programming to be able to program a computer. So she led a symposium along with a bunch of other people, and they came up with something called COBOL, which is used still today in business fields. And it's basically a programming language that can use English commands versus numbers or other types of programmings, and it made computers and computer programming a lot more accessible to everybody and led to kind of the widespread use of computers that we see nowadays. So if you enjoy your computer and you enjoy being able to use your computer without having to code it, thank you, Grace Hopper, for that fantastic innovation. Alright, so the easy part of the black one is just cutting out the outline, but I have to go in and cut out all of her face. That's the hard part. See you when it's done. I figure while I sit here and cut out Maria Sibylla Marion's face better, I could talk about Marie Anne Poult Lavoisier, who was the wife of Antoine Lavoisier, which is a name you might actually recall from grade school as the guy who discovered the law of conservation of mass. This idea that mass is not created or destroyed, it's just transferred into something else, which is a very fundamental idea in all of science, specifically chemistry. What we didn't learn in school is that Lavoisier's wife, Marie, played a major role in the lab as well, especially in note-taking and drawings. The Lavoisiers' combined work reinvented chemistry as a field, because at that time it was pretty rooted in alchemy, and alchemy contained a lot of false ideas. So if you're in the field of chemistry or love chemistry, you can thank Marie Lavoisier for helping create chemistry as the scientific field we know it today. Got everything cut out. Here's all like the tiny eyes and everything. Back to the ironing board we go. Yeet, the ironing board is our friend. Yeet, the ironing board is our friend. Woohoo. Now that we have everything cut out, we're gonna take our actual like background. And the first thing I like to start with is the overall giant black outline. So I usually give it a quick, from everything I learned in the tide pool video, if you give it a quick re-iron, kind of get it stuck down, you can actually peel back the, oh my gosh, I just stopped talking. You can peel back the paper, reveal the second sticky side, and since you just reheated it back up with the iron, it's a little bit warm and tacky, and you can kind of put it in position onto your fabric. And it should hopefully match up pretty good if you traced it correctly. Once you're happy with the position, I'm ironing it. So it is very much like an iron-on patch. If anybody is familiar with those, spent a lot of time ironing on patches in Girl Scouts. So ta-da! Here's her with hair and eyebrows. So next, I like to take my reference image and try to position the nose and the mouth and the eyeballs. Stick those down, and that's how it goes. Let me see if I can get you guys a better angle. So here we go. I get my reference image out. Get my reference. And then we just kind of, play with it. Go, do we like her face this way? And you kind of peel the backs off and just stick them down. It's very advanced stickers. I got really stressed out doing this on my tide pool one, I think because it was so many tiny little pieces. This is actually not quite as bad because there's a lot fewer pieces to mess up on here. And it's not like if I put one down, it potentially messes up like the other 20. If I put one down, it just messes up the one portrait and I can always redo it. All right, I'm happy with that. So we iron down the facial features and then we iron her down on her portrait. Very intense stickers. And bam, Maria Sibylla Marion is complete. 19 more to go. Alright, so here with just a brief project update and to bring you the last women scientist for this video. So I have gotten 13 women scientist portraits created, 7 more to go, and then I also have to cut out all of the other brown and blue fabric for the rest of the quilt. Work's never finished for the designer. Last scientist I'm going to talk about for this video is Marie Tharp, an American geologist who worked extensively on maps of the ocean floor, becoming the first person to produce a map of the Atlantic Ocean floor in the 50s, and discovered something called the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a bunch of ridges of mountains in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and this gave evidence for seafloor spreading and tectonic plate theory, and helped us better understand the Earth and volcanic eruptions and how earthquakes work. So anybody in the field of geology or earthquakes or volcanoes have Marie Tharp to thank for her research in making those a field today. With that, I'm going to finish up these last scientists, cut out a ton more of fabric, and see you at the end of this. Hello there, just chilling on the floor with my ladies because all 20 women scientists have been cut up. All 20 women scientists have been cut and are ready to go. Here's my lovely portrait wall I've created on the floor. That took about a week, which is honestly less time than I was expecting, and they look better than I was expecting. So that's a win on this front of the project. So that's a wrap on this video today. All of these are cut out, and next week we get to actually sew them all together and make a quilt. Woohoo! So, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for the next installment of the Women Scientists Quilts. Check out my 31 Days of Women Scientists going on right now, and keep it sciencey!